All right. Happy engineer. You're going to be real happy you're here today. I'm with my buddy Jonathan. Jonathan Boyer, welcome to the podcast, man. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
It wouldn't be right for us to not go back in time, do a little time hop
Yeah.
back to the hallways of Whirlpool Corporation, which anybody who knows Whirlpool, is going to have mixed feelings about that. Some positive, maybe some not. But 2013 to 2015, you and I were walking the halls together on totally different projects.
Yeah.
I was here working on big, giant, enormous air vented dryers, and you were developing this incredibly innovative, first to the North American market heat pump.
Sure.
And
Yeah. Let's
like
call
we
it.
would see each other and but we weren't working together. So take me back. What was your heat pump days like? What stands out to you as a highlight of the heat pump dryer days?
Oh, it was fun. I really enjoyed working on that project. It was a couple years I was there, as you pointed out, maybe 2.5. I was brought in as a basically a CAD guy that also knew engineering. So what stands out to me? Wow, all the plastic part designs that needed to be done in such a short amount of time with no allowance for extra time and budgets overrun, and they needed someone to own all of the tooling, and there was no one, and I did it. And I remember setting up shop in the molders down the street, that was my office as parts were coming off the press, and I loved doing that. I felt like I was making a difference, but I quickly realized it really wasn't being measured. They
Yeah.
needed someone to own this, but they weren't measuring the success of it.
Hmm.
It was a learning point for me, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you describe the heat pump dryer team as a high performing team?
Uh, I guess with experience, no.
Okay.
With experience now, back then maybe, but no one really knew who was in charge of what and who should be doing what. And you might hear me reference this a lot in this conversation. Who's doing the thinking? That's actually a big career point for me. I've been asking that a lot recently. Who's doing the thinking? And I don't mean who sits down and CAD and draws the stuff. I mean who goes in a room and shuts themselves in and does the real work, stares at a wall and thinks.
Yeah. That's some of the hardest work there is in
Hmm.
many cases. So the reason I asked that question is from the outside looking in, and I joke, I was actually doing one of the, I think, most exciting roles I held in all of my Whirlpool days at that time. I was the tech lead for a big dryer project, part of the VMAX and Advantage
Yep, I
program. You
remember.
remember all that, right?
Yep.
And we had all the green lights in the sense of if we needed money in our budget, we could get it. If we needed resources, we could get it. It's just like the flagship program of the category for North America Laundry at the time, and pulling on the coattails of the washer. And I had so many things happening. It was a very dynamic role, and I was loving it. And I'd kind of look off in the wings, and here was that little heat pump group, and you all looked like you were getting crushed all the time. And I used to think, maybe that's actually like the place that would be super fun because I had a lot of stresses in my life because of the visibility, because of all of the politics and the stuff that comes with engineering that most engineers don't want to do, all that nonsense. And it seemed like to me, ooh, maybe the heat pump, like these little innovative projects, small teams, to your point, go off site and kind of hide in the, these other areas and doing really cool work. There was part of me that thought maybe that's what was happening. But then same thing as the curtain got peeled back, it's like, ooh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's what was happening at all. It actually
Well,
seemed
I
like a
would
really
say
tough.
yeah, it was tough. But looking back at it, and when I was in the midst of it, it was my first job out of college. Now, I had several jobs leading up to that because I worked through college, but that was my first, got the degree. Here's your first job, right? And it was like boots. I call it boots on. Now that I'm a little bit higher up now, I call those engineering roles boots on the ground, the grunt
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
That's actually where the really important work. That's where like invention is happening, and a lot of times those inventions don't get recognized or noticed. I remember all this problem solving in injection molding part design that I did with the team, but I was owning all the tooling. So I was working with the supplier, these private conversations on, can we mold a metal mesh into this thing? Can we achieve shut off on a metal mesh? No one knew. And it wasn't,
Yes.
none of that was getting measured. I just did it and it
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, the team is fragmented and leadership's leaving and no one knows why. And it's just like, wow, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now.
So if you took that experience and to your point, you have since gone on, to a much higher level, incredible success. And we want to talk about that. But going back to those 2 years, 2.5 years, what would you encourage an engineer who's boots on the ground right now to really focus on to make sure they're getting the growth and the development of the things they need, but that they don't to get lost in, they don't miss the true opportunity to turn it into future success within the organization? What's the takeaway or what's the lesson you would offer
Well,
someone now?
I say this a lot. I'm not the expert. All I can say is if I were to go back to that specific situation and talk
Sure.
to me, it would be something like, spend more time developing a rapport with your manager. Talk about things that don't matter before you talk about the things that do matter. That's a Dr. Phil thing. If you don't talk about the things that don't matter, no one cares about what matters. That kind of thing. And I've seen that ring true in my career. Like, my goodness, your manager, if you can have such a good relationship with them, they'll go to bat for you and they'll start advocating for things you're doing that aren't being measured, that should be measured. Then the stuff you're doing is maximized value. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
100%. And every engineering leader I've ever coached, some of our energy will go into this point. How do you build the kind of relationship, not just with your manager, your manager's
Yeah,
peers,
that's true.
mentors, other people, this whole concept of why that matters. A lot of engineers don't have that skill set. They don't want to have that skill set because personality or otherwise. It's like, I shouldn't have to do that, Zach. That's what people will tell me. Like, I shouldn't
I
have
agree.
to
I
worry
kind
about
of
these
agree with that,
relationships.
but unfortunately or fortunately, it's the human factor.
Well, right. I guess what I would say is the engineer in us wishes that
Mm,
weren't true.
there you go.
But the human in everyone, it doesn't matter if you want it to be true or not. It is true. We work with people and you need to learn how to build those. So I think that's a huge lesson. You can do the best work of your life, but if nobody knows about it, it will not open doors to the future of your career.
There's a silver lining here, Zach,
Do it.
and it's, even if you missed the boat on what I said, because I missed the boat initially, you have built this foundation of competency, and
Yeah.
now you really didn't. Not all's lost, because the next team you go to, you have this foundation of competency that you've built, and you can talk to your manager, just be honest with them about, this is what happened on the last team. I don't want it to happen again. Here's what I was able to build, though.
Yeah.
How do we take what I did here that went unseen and make it seen in this new role? Something like that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, boots on the ground, if you're not developing that competency, you're going to have a bigger problem in the long run. So it's really
Yeah,
good.
that's true. Yeah,
Really good.
correct.
So where'd you go from there? You wrapped up at the pool and we got a little bit of time between there and today. So give us the quick version. Where did career take you after that?
Yeah, a lot of places. I was continuing my master's degree while I was at Whirlpool. And when I graduated, I was looking around for my next thing, wanted a little bit more responsibility, and Whirlpool was in a weird spot. I saw managers and leaders being walked out the door and no shows to work, weird stuff, right? I'm sure some of your audience can relate to that. Talking to some of the senior people that I worked with, boots on the ground, that have worked this Whirlpool for years, like, it's a cycle. And then I'm like, well, what's next for me? And it didn't seem like anything was on the horizon there. And I was driving an hour and a half every day, 3 hours total. So I was
Wow.
like, I need to find something closer to home. I went to a big company, global company, Parker Hannifin. was there for 2.5 years as well. And that was right down 5 minutes down the road for me. It was a pneumatics division, and I was a new product development engineer, new products, new ideas, new technologies. And my time was split between inventing new pneumatic technology mechanisms
Sure.
and customer assembly line issues. So I was a product engineer split role,
Okay.
which is probably why I left, because it wore me thin, and those kinds of split roles wear you out, you know?
Yeah, I've got a guy right now I'm working with who has a dual role. And in his own words, I've got two bosses,
Mm,
and he's at Lockheed. And we talked through the situation. It's as close to two solid line leaders with opposite agendas I've ever seen. That's just brutal.
it
Just brutal
is.
when you're getting pulled constantly in two different directions and you don't know what's the priority and where to go. Even if your hours are contained, which usually they're not. Most people in those situations are working lots of OT and weekends, and it's brutal. But even if you're working 40 hours, to be in that environment is really taxing.
Yeah, because both managers say we've signed you up for this percentage of work on this project, and what are you supposed to do? Like guarantee you got that amount, or I don't know. It's
Yeah, because every engineering project is a perfectly straight line on demand for your time, right?
yeah, right. Exactly.
Okay, and then Stryker came after Parker Hannifin?
Yeah, I had a buddy leave and go to Stryker, and was like, "Hey, this is awesome over here. You should come on over." And I didn't think anything of it, but I just gave him my resume, and then actually I was on my way to Kentucky. I almost accepted an offer in Lexington
Oh,
for
wow.
another pneumatics company. I went to the interview and everything went well, and I was on my way back, and I took my whole family with me because they wanted a road trip. And I get a phone call from an unknown number, and we just pulled off an exit to get some McDonald's, and I answer it, and it says, "I'm so and so, director of robotics at Stryker. I got your resume." And I'm just telling my wife, "Go in with the kids. I'm sitting out here."
Get me a Big Mac. I'll be here.
Exactly. They waited for me. It was awesome. There's more to it. But yeah, I talked to him, and he inspired me with what they were doing in robotics. And he was like, "So what do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm about ready to accept an offer. And I'm not just saying that. Like, I'm literally," and I told him the situation. And he was just like, "Oh," he's like, "Wow, you're there. Okay." He's like, "What if I can get you a phone interview tomorrow? Don't accept that offer till we talk to you."
Okay, I have to at least pull the thread a little bit. You made a
Yeah.
comment. Oh, there's more to the story. What's the more that makes it really cool?
The director that called me, I ended up following through Stryker because he's such a great leader and inspires
Mm,
people, and
mm.
I'm still under him. I just
Oh,
followed him.
what is it that he does so well that creates inspiration for you?
He believes in the products he marries himself to, let's say. I use the word marry because he has this unique ability to kind of make his professional identity a part of the products that he is responsible for. So when he's talking about it, you feel like he's talking about himself, and it's inspiring. That's all I could say is he made a believer out of me.
That's amazing. Do you feel like that ability to inspire has rubbed off on you at all as you've spent time with him?
That's a great question. I hope so. Maybe in different ways because he's so top level budgetary vision casting. Where's the division going?
Yeah.
And then I consider myself still boots on the ground, higher level though. And I am in the process of inspiring others in a technical sense. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about why GD&T is cool. And it actually is. And some of the things I say, I see people in the room's ears perk up, and I
Yeah.
know I got them.
I have to admit, Jonathan, your posts on LinkedIn about GD&T are awesome. Like
Thank you.
some of the best content I've ever seen on that topic, because my memories of learning GD&T were not positive. It was very boring, very dry. How long do I need to know this until
Same,
I can stop thinking about it
same here.
and let someone else handle it? I never really got into it. But then I see your content and I'm like, you know what? I missed an opportunity to gain a deeper level of understanding and competency about how critical GD&T really is to engineering. I missed the boat on that.
Thank you for that input, because those posts I make, there is so much effort and time that goes into each sentence. I'm so passionate about it that hopefully it comes through.
Amazing. So you end up at Stryker. The McDonald's stop of destiny happens. You get your Big Mac. Everything changes. You, instead of Lexington, you stay in Michigan.
Thank God.
And you're building your career. No offense to Kentucky. We love you,
No
Kentucky.
offense. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned when we were chatting before the interview, this idea of a sentence that's been told to you by one of your past bosses many times. And I want to repeat it here because I've heard it too. And honestly, Jonathan, I'm guilty in the past of saying things like this in different contexts.
Yep.
There are things we love to do, and there are things we have to do. This notion that our career is made up of two types of work, the work you actually want to do and love to do and you look forward to do, and then all the other garbage and baggage and red tape and bureaucracy and the must-dos, have-to-dos that nobody likes, that nobody wants. Sorry, it's called work for a reason. That's one of those
Yes.
phrases that goes right along with this. Like, it's called work, not play. So get to work, right? And just
Exactly.
stop complaining. And I think most people reasonably accept that that's true, and they don't ever really push back against that. They feel lucky if even 10 or 20% of their job ignites their passions, and they're happy to take home a paycheck. You reached a point in your career where you decided, I don't want to accept that as true anymore.
Correct.
When did that happen?
Like you said, I've had this notion that I should just accept that as a truth, and I've been testing it. Is this true? Because I've kind of not accepted it. The straw that broke the camel's back for me was a couple years ago, after the COVID craziness died down and people are starting to come back to work, and work was different all of a sudden. I don't know how, still have a hard time trying to describe it. The world's forever changed and how we do work, even though we're back in the office. Seems like it. And then that coupled with the group I was in restructured under a new organization, a new umbrella, and leadership left, more leadership was assigned, and money was moved in a different direction, yada, yada. Everyone would know this story.
Yep.
And left me with a pile of stuff that I don't like doing, paperwork and stuff. And being told, here again, there's points in a project where we love doing stuff, points in a project where we hate doing stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, but I don't think this has to be this way, because there's opportunities now in our team, the gaps being unfilled gaps that align with my passions, that could be measured if the manager cared about them. How do I get the manager to care about them and then put me on them so that I still love going into work? And so that put me into this cycle of, I need to spend time. For me, it's prayer and meditation. And I spent a whole year of consistently walking around the building. The building I was in had a nice 3-mile path through the woods. And through lunchtime by myself, I fasted and I prayed and meditated for a whole year. And
wow.
Every day. And with the belief that this has got to change, because I'm not just going to up and quit. I'm not going to be one of those people. And so I kind of just would visualize the job I wanted, the ideal role, and think about it and pray about it and ask God to align interests in the team out there that's for me. And so that's what I did. And I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking for, but that's how it transitioned for me.
Okay, let's sit on this for a moment, because one of the things I've seen as true with so many engineering leaders in their stories that they have before they meet me, and then the work we do together in shaping their career future and how it comes to pass. This idea of visualizing the role you want. And then you mentioned, I didn't want to be one of those people. I want to talk about those people for a second, because what I've seen, and I just want You tell me if you see it the same way or if this aligns with why you would make that comment. I don't want to be one of those people. There are a lot of engineers who will step away quickly from the situation you were in. I don't like this job. I have no more passion for this. I dread coming into work, or I get the Sunday afternoon depression kind of thing. So I'm going to change my job to get out of this situation. But those people, the way I see it, are running from a situation they do not like. They're not running toward a clear vision of what they actually want.
So that's the missing piece.
They have a general sense. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't want this. I don't want this. What I want is this thing over here. It's like very vague. All they know is, please don't make me do this again. And they run into another situation. And then 2 years later, they're doing it again. And 2 years later, they're doing it again. And they've never taken the time that you just described to actually get deeply, passionately clear about what would the ideal role look like. And so, first of all, would you agree with that? Or do you see anything aligned with why those people are not who you want to be? Or is there something else?
Well, I agree with you 100%. I would just put maybe another point on it. I don't know if I realized this in the moment, but I think the reason I made the statement, I don't want to be that guy or that person or whatever, is I didn't want to run away without running to something. So to me, it was like throwing an arrow in the dark, or shooting an arrow in there, whatever. Like, why would you shoot without a target? It doesn't make sense to shoot without a target. You don't just shoot a gun in the air unless you're a crazy redneck. You should have something to aim at. You need an aim. And I don't want to get Jordan Peterson-y on you, but but he's right. You need an aim, and you should aim for something. So I guess it's connected into that, because I would be letting my family down. I'm a sole income, 3 daughters and a wife. I don't want to let them down running away from something without a solution in mind, without a plan.
Yeah.
My wife would understand if I quit. She told me so many times. And I'm like, no, even if you don't think I'm letting you down, I would be letting you down.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone who's in that situation can relate to that, even if it's dual income. So often we need both. And so tell us about the walks.
Yeah.
You're skipping lunch, you're fasting, you're praying, you're walking and visualizing. Just if somebody wanted to start doing that and get some ideas or inspiration, like, what was that actually like? Tell me, were you
hard because I didn't need to do it. I was comfortable. My life, I had a good job. And what am I complaining about? I wouldn't say we were even desperate. I wasn't desperate. I wouldn't even have said I was unhappy, because happiness is a choice. I've heard that said, and I believe parts of it. And so what am I doing? Pretending like I have issues here and going on a walk and fasting. But I heard from so many people it works. So I was like, I'm going to do this. And skipping lunches consistently and praying was hard. But the first week, I took inventory of my life and feelings and how is this working for me. And I realized I had a new sense of gratitude, a new sense of peace, that everything's going to be okay. And I'm not pushing religious stuff on anyone. I'm just thinking through, like, there are benefits to getting to know yourself better. And one way to do that is meditate. And I got to know Jonathan better. And I was like, I want to keep spending time with this guy. That's such a weird thing to say.
Hey, but that's honestly, I forget who said it. I'll have to look up the quote later, but 90% of the world's problems are caused by man's inability to be alone with his thoughts.
Yeah, that's good. That's right. And I've heard that.
That concept that we don't know ourselves, and then when we pull back the curtain and get to know ourselves, we don't like what we see. That's a big area of esteem and development we all need to lean into. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. There's a part of me that felt a responsibility to do this time, meditate, pray in secret. Didn't tell my wife about it. She noticed because I was losing some weight, which I was like, yeah, whatever, not a big deal. I was trying not to make a big deal out of it, realizing that I felt like I was bringing something home to my family. If you think about the old Western, you'd had the people go out ahead and blaze a trail and then come back and let you know
Ooh.
what was on ahead. That's what I was doing, going out and then reporting back.
Hmm.
And I felt this responsibility.
So
And
good. So good. If you
yeah,
can describe, I know these are hard things to put words to,
yeah,
at
they
least
are.
in my journey. I've had similar, moments. It's hard to put words. But in terms of the clarity of the vision, maybe from the beginning of that year towards the end, what was the arc of that process like? At the beginning, did it feel very difficult to even focus or imagine what it was? And by the end, you were just every day going back to that same, this is the thing, Lord, this is what I want, help me have this, or was it fuzzy the whole time? Or I don't
No.
know, just describe a little bit what that was
Well,
like
I
in
want to
terms
be
of
careful how I
progress.
describe it because some people might hear this and say, I've tried that and it didn't work.
Mm,
And I really empathize with that because I'm there with you. I don't know why it worked for me this time. And I'm not claiming to say it's going to work for you too if you do it. It just worked. It probably has something to do with the timing of everything. Maybe I'm matured. I don't know. I'm 37 now. Back then I was 35 when I started it. It definitely was fuzzy when I started. Why am I doing this? Like I mentioned, this kind of sense of guilt. Why am I,
mm-hmm,
do I even need to
mm-hmm.
do this?
Yeah.
Pushing through that and realizing, actually, I have to do this. And then realizing how great it is that I have the time to do this, like
Ooh,
gratitude.
yeah. So good.
And I continue it to this day. I have slacked a little bit. You have to take breaks. So I'm starting up another round of prayer and meditation, spending time with God, because I think there's a new thing for me and I want to do what's right for my family. And I
So
tell
good.
people at the workplace, if they ask, this isn't me shoving religion down anyone's throat. This is just what I do. Whether I believe this stuff or not is besides the point because it's working. I do happen to believe it, but
Okay. Let me ask you this then. At some point in that journey, you set an intention
hmm
that my next role, I'm going to come out of this situation where I frankly do not look forward to doing what I'm doing all day. It's not a role that aligns with my passions. You said my next role will align solely around my passions. My
yes, I
career
did.
plan, my new career plan is not based on the job descriptions or the titles on the org chart. My new career plan is to integrate my passions into a role at Stryker.
You took the
And
words right out of my mouth.
I literally did. This is what you told me when we were talking. And so
Yeah.
yeah, you sent me that. And I
Okay.
was so inspired by that. So inspired by that. So if that's the intention, a lot of people would hear that and say, like, rallying cry, yes, I'm on board. I would want that too, but probably be met by a lot of disbelief or doubt that that's
Yeah,
possible. That's not how companies work, Jonathan. You don't know my
yeah.
company. Okay. Well, Stryker's not a small organization. It's not Fortune 20, but it's not small. And there's all the same objections I'm sure would exist inside your company that anyone
Oh
else might
yeah.
have inside their own
And
company.
I got
And yet,
resistance. I got resistance on this. Yeah.
okay, so that's what we need to talk about because you're sitting here today successful in that intention. So
Yes.
the punchline, let's in case anybody wants to see around the corner, it worked. Jonathan landed the role. Okay, how did that happen? Tell us about the resistance. Tell us what you had to face and how did you create these outcomes?
I first decided that I was going to continue in my role no matter what happens, even if this process doesn't work. I'm happy, Lord, with what you've given me, even if you don't bless me, that kind of thing. And I bet you that I matured a whole bunch through that process. I don't know by how much because I don't have a scale, but going into my next role, I probably came in with a sense of being, I don't even know what to call this. I don't have the vocabulary for it. So I'll just talk it out. It's something like I brought this energy, this way of communicating the right things because I spent a whole year consistently thinking about it
Mm-hmm.
and visualizing the guy, the hiring manager, whoever it is, sitting in front of me. I did it for a full year. And thinking, oh, so why did I do it for a year? Because it happened to be about a year when a role came up. Two roles came up that I interviewed for. But I was just like waiting my time, and like roles would pop up and I would look at them and I'd be like, it doesn't feel right yet. Don't know why. My wife would be like, you're crazy, go for it, So does that starting to answer what you're asking?
Yeah. So you're doing the
Okay.
visualizations.
Yep.
You've resigned yourself to the decision, I'm going to be as happy as I can be here,
Yep.
regardless of the outcome. You fall into this state of grace and state of gratitude.
Yep.
And now you're looking. You've got your peripheral vision open. The blinders are off. Roles are popping up. And I'm assessing the role against the vision, the role against the vision.
Ooh, that's a good way to say it.
If it's a match, I'm going to pounce. If it's not a match, I'm just going to be patient.
Yeah.
And so then a year is arbitrary. A year later, two roles open up that you're going to interview for. You made the comment earlier that you faced resistance. What was that?
Well, I don't know how to describe it, but it was a almost an energy of
Okay.
what do you like, almost like making me feel that what I was doing was ridiculous. It's not going to work. There were comments made even by my manager at the time that on the face of them weren't really bad, but on the drive home felt yucky. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The words he said weren't bad. Why do I feel like crap? And it was something
Specifically
like,
around your intention to this role will be
yes,
about my passions primarily.
yes, that specific thing. And in the comments that were made, I'm just going to paraphrase something like, first of all, reminding me that some things we have to do at work, we're not always happy with, that whole spiel again,
Yeah.
which
Back to the speech.
delegitimizes my concern to begin with. When you say, hey, I really want to do these things, and then to have a manager come in and shoot you with that, it's like, what are you really saying to me? And then other things like, in order to get to the next level, this is really what's expected of a principal engineer, which is basically saying you don't got what it takes. Just want you to know. At least that's how I took it. I'm sure he didn't mean it that way, but it doesn't matter. It's resistance. And maybe it's not him. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's my insecurities, which is resistance either way you look at it, right?
Yes. Yes. Tell us about the moment you knew this is aligned with the vision, the role that you took.
It was a lot later than I wanted it to be. When I got the offer from the team and the hiring manager said to me, we want everything you talked to us about in the interview. We need that. And that's when I was just like, seriously, I get to do everything I said? And so I guess that's the answer. And it was much later. I wanted it sooner than that.
Then we need to back up. So tell us about the courage and how you actually took a stand for the job you wanted in an interview when most people would assume, like, I take what I can get.
So
what was that about?
The year of prayer and fasting and meditating and all that was me also starting to set the stage and then play the role. And that might put a bad taste in people's mouths, but it's the truth. I felt inspiration, divine inspiration. I feel like it was God telling me, Jonathan, set the stage. And I'm like, what does that mean? It's like, you're the producer, you're the director, set the stage. What do you want? Then play the role. So I spent the whole year pretending to be the guy I wanted to be. And at the end of it, realizing I'm just going to tell everyone what I want. This is what I want out of this role. This is what I can provide. Here's my competencies. You either want me or don't want me. I got nothing to lose.
Wow.
Yeah.
We could have a whole nother conversation about identity and pretending. One of my favorite coaching questions, Jonathan, is to ask someone, who are you pretending to be?
Yeah.
It's interesting how people approach and answer that. But at the end of the day, we're all playing a role that aligns with some identity we hold of ourselves. And I love this notion that you can proactively and intentionally craft a new part in your own play, in your own movie, and go play that role. And we all do it. We do it in different contexts. Halloween is a crazy example. You see people put on costumes and act completely differently, but we're all doing it. And
yes, we are. You're right.
It's cool to hear you describe you felt divinely led to change your identity and become a new person.
Yes, I did.
And one of the differences between people who drive tremendous success in their life, let alone their career, but career part of life, is someone who understands that and shapes their identity on their own terms from within, rather than letting other people, society, culture, a bad influence shape that identity for you. It's a tremendous asset.
Wow, that you're right. We could have a whole nother podcast on that, because I have noticed since I've taken my new role, my new assumed identity, I hate saying that, but there's some truth to what you're saying, is instead of me pushing, it's pulling me. And the reason I feel that way is because the expectation level in my new role is set now, and
Yes,
all the things I've ever wanted to do are now expected.
that's right.
And I've built my own personal accountability in that, because I said it and now everyone wants it, and now I gotta deliver. And good news is I love what I'm doing, so I will deliver.
Jonathan, we will do another conversation sometime about this. And I'll just say one last thing. This is why all of my coaching programs are in the context of community, and I don't do any one-on-one exclusive engagements anymore. Because when you make a public declaration of who you want to be, you create that identity and you tell your tribe, this is the new me, this is what I'm going to do, here's the new standard. You don't want to go back into that room the next day and be living well below that place. So to your point, it creates the pull. This is the power of people expecting of you that new version. And most people are too afraid to make the claim that this is who I am, because now I have to live up to that.
And I get that. Because if you don't have the skills and the competency to back it up, you're going to feel hanging in the breeze and scared.
Sure.
But I had never once felt that way, because I had the competency to back it up, and it dovetailed perfectly into the expectations.
What a beautiful full circle back to boots on the ground at Whirlpool. All those days mastering injection molding and tooling and GD&T, and a bulletproof level, a battle-tested level of confidence in the things that you knew.
Yes.
And could bring that into this new environment. But
yeah.
So cool. Well, Jonathan, if you had to say, these are the biggest lessons I learned about myself in the journey to creating now the opportunity to have a dream job, what are the first things that come to mind?
It's just not, certain things just aren't true. So I guess we're summarizing what we talked about. It's just not true. There's some things you have to do and not be happy with in your role. Another thing is, there is a team that wants you now, I believe. It's just not true that you won't find a spot. There's a gap somewhere in the industry that only you can fill.
Oof, love that. I love that.
There's so many points we made, but honesty, that's what we were talking about with like telling people what you want. Be honest with what you want.
That also feels like a Jordan Peterson point. Tell the truth.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, right.
I love it. Channeling his inner Jordan, Jonathan and Jordan. Well, okay, because there are probably 100 points, let's leave it there. I think those are really powerful. And I have a strong feeling someone's going to want to pick your brain about this, or just track your success in the future, or start looking at those GD&T posts that you agonize so carefully over. Yep. So Jonathan, where can people connect with you and just get to know more about your story?
I do everything through LinkedIn. So if you DM me on LinkedIn, that'd be great. I'd have tons of conversations with people on LinkedIn. That'd be great.
Okay. That's the place. We'll make sure your LinkedIn profile is hooked up in the show notes. Happy Engineer, go sync up with Jonathan, follow his content, support what he's doing, and really think hard about this conversation. Who's doing the thinking? Now the baton has been passed to you, Happy Engineer. So, Jonathan, amazing to have this chat. And you and I have in common some training experiences back in our Whirlpool days. And OpEx, the name of that, has the same sentiment that we talk about here on the podcast, that questions lead answers follow.
Mm-hmm.
And we all want better answers, a dream job to advance in our life in some way. We're looking for answers. So we need to ask better questions. So what would be the question that you would lead the happy engineer with coming off of this conversation?
For me, it was the question that I would ask myself on a daily basis doing those walks. Is there a team out there that wants me? And what I mean by me is really wants me. Like it sounds weird, but who they know me, what my values, my personal values are, where do they even, I spend so much time personally on other things. I have competencies in other things. Is there a team that needs those things and wants those things? And the good news is there is.
Jonathan's answered that question. The answer is yes. But happy engineer, go ask yourself, do you believe that there is a team that wants you? And if the answer today is no, then you've got some prayer walks to do to go
Sure.
to go see. Can you convince yourself otherwise? And I'll just say this. It's the old, if you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is a really powerful place to start. Jonathan, thank you so much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
you and your
Thank you.
time. We'll have to do this again, get that round 2 scheduled one of
Let's
these days.
do it. That'd be great.